It's Alabama and Florida. No strangers to meeting in the SEC Championship with everything on the line. The Tide beat the Gators in the game's inaugural edition en route to topping Miami for the national championship in 1992. 4 years later, Danny Warfel and the Gators got the best of Bama before winning their first title against rival Florida State.
Blitz, Tebow back.
Then it was Tim Tebow in 2008, leading Florida past #1 Alabama before taking down Oklahoma in the national championship.
Come on now, you can't do this stuff.
But a year later, Alabama would get its revenge.
Back to the left. He's got his tight end there. Touchdown, Alabama.
The Tide rolling Tim Tebow and the Gators in Atlanta on their way to beating Texas and starting a dynasty. 6 years and 3 titles later, Alabama bests Florida again before beating Clemson for their 4th title in 7 years.
Hauls it in. Touchdown, Alabama.
What's on the line in 2020? Much of the same. It's Alabama and Florida, and it's on CBS. And it is Saturday night, 8 Eastern on CBS. These two teams have played 10 times for the SEC championship. That is twice as many as any other teams combined. These two schools know each other well. They know that oftentimes to win the SEC, you got to get by the other. And Gary Danielson is going to be in the booth for the 15th consecutive year in the SEC championship game. He'll be with Brad Nessler. Jamie Erdahl will be on the sidelines. Of course, we kind of had things changed up on us a little bit last week with Florida's loss to LSU. In your mind, does that take any intrigue or buzz away from this matchup?
I'm afraid it does. You know, it was a game that had both of them done their job the week before. You know, I think you could clearly say, without a doubt, the winner would be in the championship. Pretty much feel like LSU a year ago, that win or lose, LSU was going to be in. I think win or lose, Alabama has already deserved and put enough of a resume together. The question is now for Florida, after that shocking loss to LSU, will the committee still grant them a spot in the top 4, or, as a lot of people are predicting, they've already eliminated themselves with that bad loss? I'm not quite sure about that. I would say this, that if they win, yes, they may have the toughest loss of, you know, maybe the worst loss of all the people competing for that spot, but they also will have the best win of all the people competing for that spot should they knock off Alabama. So still some intrigue, but not quite the way it was leading up as we entered the last week of play.
Gary, if it does come down to a Florida winning this game and a Texas A&M, a team that beat Florida,
right?
I mean, how do you think the committee goes about figuring out which one of those teams gets in?
Yeah, Chris, this is a crazy year. You know, even if you look at the top 10 teams, you know, or the top 12 teams, however it is, you know, you've got Indiana in there with 5 wins. You've got Coastal Carolina in there. You know, it's kind of a weird year all together. So I think you throw away all precedents this year. The committee's going to look at it. You know, even a team like Iowa State, as you flashed up the college football rankings, you know, not names you usually see. And what sticks out to me is that record for Ohio State. They've only played, I think in 3 or 4 of those, they had a week off before they played the game. So there is some inequity in these schedules. So it's not going to be easy. I think in the long term, when they get in there and they start talking about it, they're going to look like, all right, what do we just think? Looking at these teams, who do we think are the best teams? And I think that's going to have to go about. You know, obviously A&M has beaten Florida, but Florida will have beaten Alabama, and they'll be the SEC champs. So I'm not sure, but I do think Florida, for their best chance to win, obviously they have to beat Alabama, which is a tough chore. And this is a good Alabama team. We all know that. But I also think would help them, given their best chances, if Notre Dame beats Clemson. Because if Clemson wins, I think Notre Dame and Clemson will both be in, and then it'll get kind of tricky for Florida.
Well, Alabama, as you mentioned, probably already in. It might just depend on what seed they'll be. Do you see much of an advantage this season in being a 1 seed over a 2 or a 3?
Well, I don't know who's 4. I don't know what the matchup would be. So, if you're the 1 seed and the 4 seed is Ohio State, there's no advantage in that matchup. We all know Ohio State may need the committee's blessing to get there, but we can all look at tape and see that they're capable of winning against anyone this year. I mean, I've seen them upset. Everybody says Florida's out because they got beat by an inferior team, but I think it was, a couple years back, they lost to Purdue. And I remember a couple years before that, Clemson lost to a 26-point underdog, Syracuse, and they still made it. So we will see. I will say this, that when you get to the Final Four, most of those teams are capable of beating each other. I do think the top 4, if it's Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Alabama, they will be great football games, both of them.
As for the game itself on Saturday night in Atlanta between Florida and Alabama, do you buy into the notion at all that Florida might get a little bit of a boost because of that loss, that hiccup against LSU? Because there are some people that say you never want to face an angry team coming off a loss like that. Right,
and you also don't want to face a team that has the best offensive line in the league and an emerging defensive line. Everything's a factor in all sports. I think the biggest factor is getting Kyle Pitts back for Florida. He didn't practice at all the week leading up to LSU. And, let's be honest, as much as Dan Mullen might have preached to his football team that LSU was capable, I mean, they're kids. They watch TV. They saw LSU play. I don't know if Florida believed it, but getting number 84 back is a tough matchup for any college football team. It will put pressure on the Alabama defense. And, I will say about Florida, they're capable offensively of putting a lot of points on the board. And then that brings pressure to the game for Alabama. We saw early in the year when Ole Miss scored against them and put a lot of points, the pressure shifted to Mac Jones saying, we got a match here. And they did in that football game. So, Florida defense is going to have to play way better than they played recently, and that doesn't mean just the last game. They have to up their game a lot, but hopefully they'll focus in to play their best football game for Gator fans because they deserve that. They're in the championship. The last 2 times they came in with inferior offensive football teams with Treon Harris and Andy Appleby playing quarterback. They weren't good enough. This year, they're capable of scoring.
And they've got a quarterback who's in the running for the Heisman Trophy, and this is a game that's going to decide the SEC champion, potentially the college football playoff, and potentially the Heisman Trophy. Both of these quarterbacks up there. A week ago, they were co-favorites. Now, because of that loss, Kyle Trask has kind of come back a little bit. Mac Jones, the favorite. What do you see in this quarterback matchup?
Well, I see a lot of similarities between these two guys. They're both extremely hard workers, extremely accurate throwing the ball. They're prepared every week. They're both capable, obviously, of leading their team and scoring a lot of points. And both of them have a lot of weapons around them. And they both have a player out there on the field in DeVonta Smith and Kyle Pitts that distorts the field. But as you look at them, I mean, their stats are great. And they play just as good as those stats. They're both great kids. They both were lightly recruited. That's hard to say when you get offered by the SEC, but they weren't the 4- and 5-star players, like the Jake Fromms or the Tuas that everybody was chasing. So they worked hard, and when they got their opportunity, they were ready for it. So it's great to see kids like that be rewarded.
We just saw the new Heisman odds, and there is a new contender. DeVonta Smith now has the second best odds to win the Heisman Trophy. You covered Desmond Howard the last time a wide receiver won a Heisman Trophy 29 years ago. Make a case for Smith to be this year's Heisman.
Well, he's going to be in it no matter what, because even if he doesn't win it, he's going to get enough votes to impact the votes that Mac Jones is going to get in this Heisman race. And what he does that Desmond Howard and Johnny Rogers, did, is he makes the spectacular play, the highlight play. And I think the fact that he came back when everybody thought he would turn professional and dedicated another year to college football will serve him well with the voters that really treasure college football and respect players that respect the game as well. So I've covered a lot of great ones. He's right there. When you're scouting DeVonta Smith, he's great. Go watch practice. He's just as good in practice, and it spreads to his team. If he does win it, couldn't happen to a better person, a better player. And I can tell you this, it's going to be a tough chore for Florida to slow him down. If he was in the NFL right now, he'd be almost as uncoverable as he is in college football.
Yeah, our latest mock draft has him going in the teens, right next to his teammate Jalen Waddle, who's injured right now. All right, for the game, we expect a lot of points. What else do you expect to see on Saturday night in Atlanta?
Well, I think one thing that has to be brought into this football game right away is that Florida offensive line needs to step it up. You know, even the LSU front that's very young and that has struggled through the year put pressure on Kyle Trask in this football game. They have to play, number one, a lot better. Number two is you're not going to stop Alabama, but the short passes have to be tackled in this game. So far as I've watched Florida, they've struggled, you know, guys catching short passes and making big plays out of it. So, you know, if they can force Mac Jones to complete 6 or 7 passes in a row or 6 out of 8 to score a touchdown, they got a chance because they can score 2. But I got my eyes on that offensive line for Florida. They have to step up because we know the Alabama offensive line and Najee Harris will show up.
Looking forward to the game on Saturday. 4 or 5 months ago, we had no idea if we'd have a season, if we'd ever get to this point. Congratulations on a great season once again with CBS and for getting through this thing, Gary.
Yeah, and congratulations to everybody. A lot of people have sacrificed for this season. Most importantly, those players who've been doing this since June, stepping aside and taking care of themselves. So they deserve this big night. All
right, Gary Danielson's going to be on the call Saturday night as we crown a champion in the SEC championship game, 8 Eastern from Atlanta. Alabama and Florida appearing in their 13th SEC championship games. Alabama, the most wins, 8-4 all time. Florida could equal that record with the victory on Saturday.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.